My name is Wendy Harbour. Before I worked for the Disability Services at the University of Minnesota, I'm now a master's student. I'm going for my education degree at Harvard University in Boston, Massachusetts. Today I'm going to talk about universal design. Before I do that, I'd like to give you a little background information about myself. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in educational psychology, and I started working the educational systems in K through 12 settings. It's interesting being every day working with kids who are deaf but have other disabilities as well. They are called, handicapped. That's what the term was before. So every day I worked with this girl who went to a place called Have a Heart Farm. And that place was really amazing. It was a great learning experience for me, both personally and professionally. That place, Have a Heart Farm, the farmer, his son had a very serious case of cerebral palsy. And after a while, the farm wasn't running very well. And there's many farms here in Minnesota and in Wisconsin that kind of have fallen apart, and so he decided to give the farm to his son's physical therapist. Well, that woman, her name is Jan, and she got this idea to create Have a Heart Farm. And it's an amazing place because it's designed with kids in mind, from their perspectives and their minds. So the house is completely accessible, and it's a place for kids who have disabilities they can take care of. It's a wonderful place, but also at the same time, the barn and the storage area and the entire place is just beautiful place for kids to go who have disabilities. So when you go to that place, there's speech therapists there, physical therapists, occupational therapists, all different kinds of therapists. But when you go there, when kids go there, they don't feel like they're at the hospital or clinic. It feels like a farm. They play and they have fun, and they don't really realize that they're working with their therapist there. It's kind of a funny point, but some kids who go there, their siblings beg to go to that place with their brother or sister who's going there, and you never hear a kid say, please, I want to go to a speech therapist. But it's created like the swing set, for example. It's just not a regular swing set. It's a box with sides, and it has windows. So if a child can only lay down, then they can still swing on the swing set, and they can see through the windows, and it's beautiful for them. Or if it's cold, there's a heater, so, and inside the floor is heated as well, so if they can only crawl, then they can do that. It's a wonderful experience working with kids, and that was my first time with universal design, and it has all children in mind. So I wanted to explain a little bit about, there's two models. Well, up until now there's been two models about disabilities. The first is called interaction model. Some people call it in Europe it's called the social model. And it's really good because it really says that there's no such thing as a disability. Maybe if you have a different eye color or something. So if a person has disability, there's nothing wrong with the person. If you become impaired for some reason, like if a person is in a wheelchair and they're trying to go up the ramp and it's stuck, it doesn't mean that there's a person with a problem with the person. It means that there's a problem with the environment. And that's the interaction model. The other model that I'd like to discuss is called the medical model of disabilities. And that's a really old-fashioned perspective on disabilities. It says that disabilities are always a negative thing, and it's something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be cured, and that there is a problem with the person. Those two models are kind of opposite when you're comparing them. There's not very much research, but there is somebody who says, well, those two models, a lot of people don't really know very much about it. So when I'm with in the classroom with the teacher, I try to help her understand that maybe her attitude needs to change. Her attitude about the kids need to change. And how she does her curriculum in the classroom needs to change so that she can help kids with disabilities. For me, I've always felt that it's been limited to have just only two models. There is another model, but they're not very well developed. So the interaction model and the medical model, those are the pretty much the only two perspectives that people really care about. Well, so how does universal design fit into this? Well, in architecture, architects began to realize that if they're designing a building, most of the time they think a little bit about disabilities, but they think about the function, and I mean, they think about some of the rules and stuff related to people with disabilities, but most of the time they just design the building whatever way they want to. Like maybe they have the beautiful looks in mind. But if they have planned this building, the building's already finished and everything, beautiful staircase in the front, and then they realize, well, people with wheelchairs, how are they going to access the building? What are they going to do? So they decide, well, they need to add a ramp. Well, where can they add a ramp? If we add a ramp in the front, it'll make it look funny. It'll make it look out of place. So some architectures will add the ramp on the back of the building. And that's not really a good idea because first, I mean, even if you can access the building from the back with a wheelchair, that doesn't mean that you can access the bathroom or the water fountain or any of the other things in the building. So it makes people with disabilities, people who are in wheelchairs, feel like they are sneaking around the back way trying to find a way in the building. And other people can go up, the front and the beautiful staircase in the front. Well, universal design changed all that. Universal design said that if you're building a building, you need to keep everyone in mind. Meaning, if you think a person with a wheelchair is going to come to this building, you add a ramp right away. And if a person who is deaf needs to use the FN system, you add that right away. And if a blind person needs Braille, you add that right away. And it changed everything related to architecture and designing buildings because it made people start thinking of other things. It's more open and more normal and more regular. Then another thing related to universal design and architecture is also about accessing the World Wide Web. People who use web pages all over the world for different reasons, social reasons. There's web pages, for example, MapQuest and many other web pages where people can connect all over the world. But imagine if a blind person was trying to access that, or a deaf person. How would they access the sound in the movies and things like that? So when you're designing computers and web pages and software and computer programs, you have to keep everyone in mind. Maybe sometimes you feel like those are really lofty goals, but the attitude and philosophy, most people are just shocked and they don't realize that it doesn't take very much work to add right away the design that you need for that. Whereas if you add it later, very often it becomes complex and difficult to do that. Universal design, both in architecture and on computer and internet access, is really developed a long ways. now education is beginning to realize that universal design can be applied to the educational setting. And looking back, my first time at Have a Heart Farm, that place utilized universal design before there was even a name for that. It's a place for all kids, and even of all ages and adults as well. It doesn't matter their age, their religion, if they're outgoing, if they're quiet or shy, introverted, whatever their personality is. It's a place that accommodates all types, people. And our attitudes need to change so that we can match that. And design needs to do that as well. In the education setting right now, my degree in education, I want to study ways that universal design principle can help every day with people who don't have a concept of that. I believe I can help various people related to, it doesn't matter if their age or their religion or their ethnicity. Universal design is a key way to inform people of the differences, people of all ages, children and adults. So that's universal design in a nutshell. And thank you.